Bleav in Rams, presented by FanDuel. Boy, do we have a week ahead. It is officially draft week. I'm Erin Coscarelli back with you. And the Rams have number 13 overall pick. That is the highest, I want to say, in the Sean McVay era. Get your action in on FanDuel Sportsbook. There's some cool plays on FanDuel Sportsbook. The New York Giants and the Jets to both draft a defensive lineman edge with their first pick. Ty Simpson to be drafted in the second round, maybe to the Rams. We'll get to all of that in a moment. But who better to ask some of these questions, read between the tea leaves, than our 11-year NFL veteran, Super Bowl champion, recently retired offensive tackle, Rob Havenstein. How are you doing? How's it going, Rob?
No, I'm doing excellent as always. It's an exciting week. Draft's coming up. All the feelings of, my draft week is starting to kind of bubble over, and it's, it's an exciting time.
It is. It's a big deal for these guys, obviously, sacrificing their whole life, finding out where they're going to live, what team they're going to play for, what coach, what fan base. Before we get into the draft, though, I have a very important question to ask you.
Okay.
The Rams did a couple of really cool, interesting things last week. I don't even know what day it is today. It's Tuesday. Okay. A couple of days until the draft, but they released a new logo. So I need to get your take on what you think about that. And then they also dropped a Thursday video. What is your take on all the kind of cool, interesting marketing drops that the Rams have had as of late?
Yeah, the marketing team's been doing a great job. With the logo and everything, I think it's more of a refresh than a redo. And I think it was kind of right on brand with the Rams, and kind of cleaned everything up, and especially with the jerseys. I wasn't the biggest fan of kind of the gradient taper into the yellow into the white, so kind of bringing back some of those more solid bold lines kind of gets a little bit back to more of the the history and everything of the Rams, which is obviously important, having I started in St. Louis, then coming back and paying homage to the Rams in the past. And, I like the look. I think it's clean. I think it's simple. I think it's, I think it'll look good there when they're out there running around on Sunday.
Yeah, it's definitely more, to me, I like it. I've been reading, I feel like some fans, they don't like change. It's like when you see a new car model and you're like, oh no, leave it the way it is. It looked great before. But the problem with the gradient, I was speaking with your CMO, the Rams CMO, and she was saying it was just hard to consistently get the logo right on everything, right? So you're not just thinking it's on a jersey, it's the how, like or on a wall, like those consistently for the Rams has to look good. So I think kind of keeping it clean, simple, it feels to me vintage. I like that look. So I'm happy with the change. I actually think it looks better than the gradient. So we're on the same page. I like that. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's like you said, it's clean. It'll go on a hat well, it'll go on a jersey well, and go on, a little toddler jersey well. Like everything's going to be a little more uniform, a little more straightforward, and it kind of lets everything pop. And it's it's going to look clean.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks clean. Okay, the other thing is your guy, you were talking about Dexter Lawrence. He's now a Bengal.
Yep.
I was I have to ask Rob about this.
Yeah, that was a shock to me, especially with the Bengals. They've been historically hesitant to give up top picks, but it makes sense to me. Especially with the a young, I guess not young anymore, but a quarterback of the caliber of Joe Burrow. It almost kind of shows everybody like, hey, we're going all in to kind of fix some of the needs of a football team. They go get a proven guy. Everyone's talking about, the down year and the lack of production. Same thing. If you play a Dexter Lawrence, he's a guy that's going to be circled from Monday on. Like, hey, this guy can't, this guy is a guy. We need a game plan for him. He's big, he's bad, he can do multiple different things. Maybe the numbers quite don't support it from last year, but the those who know Dexter Lawrence is a real guy. Then him coming into a new place, like even in his press conference, he was saying, he's got a fire lit under him that he hasn't maybe felt in a while. And I think for any other center and guard out there, it's a little bit of a,
Mm.
okay, but how much fire? Are we going to be are we going to be chilling again, or
Yeah.
are we getting back to all pro, all world form, which he has 100%. And like I said, he's a proven guy. Anything with the draft is a
Mhm.
little bit of a gamble.
Totally.
However rock solid a guy could be on his pre-draft stuff
Yeah.
may or may not work out. Dexter's a proven guy, so it makes sense to me. I was just surprised to see the move happen the way it did, I guess.
Yeah. Proven guy is kind of the thing that Les
Mhm.
Snead talks about, in that they sort of like to pencil in proven guys in free agency. That seems to be the strategy. And then they sort of backfill guys with the draft, because that's like what you said. You just don't know necessarily how that's
Mhm.
going to transition into the league, into the pros. Do you feel like, let's get into the Rams draft, because you have like a plethora of such interesting insight into how you see players fit within a Sean McVay offensive scheme, system, culture. When you think of the draft, as I mentioned, this is the highest at 13 overall for the Rams in the McVay era. The interesting part for LA is they also have to think about the future. Everybody talks, they
Mhm.
got to win now. We get it. Stafford's not getting any younger. But if they stay and stand pat at 13, does that guy become a 5-year guy, or does he need to have immediate impact?
Oh, that's tough. I was kind of rethinking this last night. There's a lot of mocks out there going O line and drafting, like I
Mhm.
said, kind of drafting potential backups. Couple 2-3 years down the road. I would think for where this team is situated, I would personally like to see an immediate impact. Um,
Mhm.
just kind of sure it up. But like I was saying before, the draft can be such a volatile thing. You may just remember a couple years ago a video popped up where they were looking at Cole Strange at picking him up at 104 offensive guard from I can't remember what school, it was a smaller school, and then he goes first round to the Patriots, and so it's such a volatile environment where anything can happen. But I think if they're going to stay at 13, I think we're looking for immediate impact. Obviously, that needs to be earned. That's the one thing about a Sean McVay-led team is there's no handouts. You could be drafted to be the guy, but if you don't show that you can be the guy or prove it, then it's going to take a little longer. Um, but I would be thinking that if they stay at 13, that it'll probably be an immediate impact.
I mean, when you think of the Rams and their draft strategy, why do you think they're so good? Like, how are they so good at drafting? I mean, they very rarely pick players that they don't find a way to develop in some capacity.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to go with obviously, the player on the field. They're in the draft for a reason. They're being looked at for a reason. Like they're good players. I think what the Rams have done really well, especially these last couple of years, is they get really good character of men.
Mhm.
That's who they bring in, whether it's hardworking, learning how to become an LA Ram. I think they really do their due diligence on the actual person behind the
Mhm.
football jersey, and then bring him into a system that has been proven to work. People that come in or coaches that come in with great energy, staff that come in with great energy. And it's just if they get a kid like who's got really good character, they bring him into the environment of the ranch. It kind of allows them to blossom, to grow, and then become the type of player that the Rams have seen and believe he can work into.
I think it's so interesting to hear you say that on the inside, because I will say from a media standpoint, it feels like that. It
It is.
feels like that. It feels like there's immense respect and admiration for the person
Yep.
outside of the player, which is unusual if you think of what the NFL can be, which is transactional, right? At the end of the
Sure.
day, it's a business. Um, and a lot of the things that McVay said during the season, he actually was the example, right? When it came to accountability, he blamed himself first
Oh, he's going to do
every
that a
time.
lot.
Yeah.
Everyone.
What were those conversations like with him in the way where, we would see him at the podium taking the blame, putting his guys in bad situations, which I always found as, that's like the best way to show support. When you were inside the locker room, was obviously he must have been the same way, I imagine.
Yeah, no. Like I said in the past, Sean is who he is. Who you see in front of the podium is probably the same message that he's given to the team. He's an open book. Obviously, there's things that will stay in house, but if he's going to bring it up on the podium, then it's definitely being communicated that way. There's no, two faces to a Sean McVay. He is who he is, and that's why all the players and we love playing for him. But when you got the head guy and you got honestly a genius of offensive football and defensive football, because in order to get an offense, you got to know what's happening on defense too. So just football in general, and for him to come in and be like, man, I really hated the call I had on third down, play number 57 or something like that. Like, it was a pivotal point of the game, and we could have won by 30. We could have lost on a heartbreak. That's what he's thinking about, is trying to get himself to do the right thing every single time. And when he feels like he doesn't, it really eats at him. You can tell it does. And I think he's done such a good job of almost still learning from that, but then moving forward and like, okay, how can I be better? I can't change the past. How do I move forward? And that's just what's made him just such an exceptional coach to play for. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think he's only getting better with age, and he was great when he was young. So it really is an exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the coolest team to cover because while he, I'm sure, protects and doesn't give too much away, he does offer insight, and you see his emotion. And that's why I'm so stoked that I get to have you on the show, because character, culture, that all seems to make sense when it's a Sean McVay led team. And when it comes to the draft, obviously the biggest talk is, and now there's some talk about Jeremiyah Love, Rams trading up.
Yeah, moving up to number 3. I read that.
Do you think that's absolutely crazy, or are you buying in?
I do. No, I'm not buying in. I think the price is going to be too high. It's, especially when they're talking about number 3 being in, with the Arizona Cardinals, that's an in-division opponent. That's going to be a steep price. I mean, it's expensive out here in California anyways. That's going to be even crazier. And so I don't think what they're going to have to give up to go ahead and do that, to get a player like a Jeremiyah Love, great player, but I just think it's going to be a little too expensive. I think it's a little far-fetched. Maybe I'm wrong. Les has been a little wizardry in the background there, but number one, I think you look at the 2 guys they have there now, and well, really 3 guys. We didn't get to see a lot of Jarquez Hunter last year. It was, Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. Kyron, just started a new contract, and I think that room is very solid moving forward, and could obviously be better with a Jeremiyah Love, sure. But I think they're solid in that production. Like I said, we haven't seen Jarquez, do what he can, and provide his talents out there in the football field. So I'm excited for that room. But I think number 3 moving up to draft a Jeremiyah Love is just going to be a little rich for this year. But
yeah. And they have other needs, which I want to get to. So for you, we talked about it a little bit last week. The position group you think right now of the most priority is?
Like I said, there's not a lot of weaknesses. So to frame it as most priority, like I said, I think this is a luxury, and I think you have the luxury to go out and get a wide receiver. Kind of what you mentioned with Matthew, whether he plays a year, 2 years, 3 years, Devontae's, he's up there, and it's going to be up to him to see how long he wants to play. He's still a stud at what he's doing now, but especially if you can bring in a young receiver to then learn from a Davante Adams, soak up some of that knowledge. I don't think that's lost on those guys there, and maybe take a couple reps off there. And so I'm still firmly in the fact that if the Rams stay at 13, that they're going to go an offensive weapon. And could it be the tight end from Oregon? It could, but I do think it's going to be a wide receiver. Kind of get him in the same room as all those guys. Let a Puka Nacua, let a Devontae Adams kind of embrace whoever it is under their arm. Be like, listen, this is how we do it. And one thing needs to be said: to play wide receiver for the LA Rams, like, you have to be a willing blocker. It's not all just offensive production. Like, there is a lot asked on those guys to know formations, motions, to go dig out safeties. Like, you're being counted on to go get in there and get a little dirty and go ahead and throw some key blocks, whether we're wrapping them on certain plays or just to the front side where they have a push crack. There's a lot being asked, so it takes a special kind of player to go in there and play wide receiver for us.
And I'm so glad you said wide receiver. I was hoping you would say wide receiver, because my follow-up question is, what kind of wide receiver? The Tutu Atwell experiment, didn't see a ton of production on the field. Perhaps he wasn't, as you mentioned, not about him, but pass blocking, that sort of thing. What type of wide receiver do you think fits best? And is there a guy that you see in the draft that has some of those qualities to complement it?
Yeah, it takes a selfless guy. Obviously, you got to have a lot of talent to go track the ball. You got to have the smarts to understand the route concepts almost as good as Sean does. Like, you got to be able to speak the same language as Sean, and Sean is speaking in a 401 level class. It's not basic 101 stuff with him. So if you can kind of speak and kind of keep the same language at the same pace, well, maybe not the same pace as him. He talks pretty fast there when he gets going, but to be able to kind of see the field, and you don't have to do it now, but you have to have the capacity to go ahead and learn all that stuff. And that's up to the Rams to go ahead and teach. But somebody who's going to be all in, willing to kind of get across the middle. And I think if you kind of draft a guy almost similar to Devontae, similar to Puka, you can almost mix and match guys anywhere. Who's your best matchup? Okay, he's going to go play slot right now. Or we're going to go kick him out to the outside. A lot of these receivers that have had a ton of success in the Rams organization all kind of fit a very similar mold, and that's because they're being asked to do a lot of the same things. So, it takes a special type of guy. And then kind of just from what I've seen, obviously I've never been in a wide receiver room, but the name of Kai Lemon starts poking out a lot. He seems pretty fearless coming across the middle, that catch after run, which is a huge thing, that yak yardage with the Rams. I think he would be a great fit. Not having been in the meetings, I think that draft process with the Rams do very well. I think understanding and like talking to the actual young man there and kind of see where he is on, hey, you're going to be asked to basically lead block. Would you do that? And he's like, what is their answer? Like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I catch the ball, I score touchdowns. Okay, that's probably not our guy. Real guy comes in and says, hey, hey, whatever you need me to do, I just want to go out there and play. That's probably more in line with what the Rams are looking for. But there's, I think towards the top couple guys in the draft for wide receivers, I don't think there's really one standout number one. I think a lot of guys have different guys for their number one. So I think there's probably a plethora of 4 or 5 guys to who you can go get, as long as the character matches with what we're trying, or what the Rams are trying to do. Then I think you're going to have the luxury of picking best available.
And look, I'm not like an Inspector Gadget by any stretch of the imagination, but the AJ Brown situation, and then you have you add a Cliff Kingsbury to the mix. What that tells me that whether, and I want to talk to you, we'll get to offensive line in a moment, because I'm so curious who you feel would be a nice fit and what the traits are for a Sean McVay offensive line. But they flirted with a wide receiver in free agency. They opted to keep Devontae. And the reason really potentially was because Devontae is expensive and they may want to reassess some of the structure of the salary cap. But they ultimately decided we're keeping Devontae. But when you bring in a Cliff, is a Cliff being brought in because we're throwing the ball more this season, or do you think it's potentially QB development and you see a guy in the draft that might be a smart enough guy, since you said IQ is very important, obviously, so is character. When you bring in a Cliff Kingsbury, what is that sort of telling you about how maybe the offense is going to look? Is it going to look different this season?
Yeah, it's going to have its wrinkles. I think at the end of the day, it's going to have the same bones as what Sean wants to do. But, bringing in a guy like Cliff, I don't have a lot of experience with Cliff, but from what everyone I've talked to, love the guy. And he's obviously been a little bit more experimental on the offensive side of the ball. And I think just kind of meshing those two things together, still having the backbone of what Sean wants to do, but maybe throwing a couple of wrinkles in there, a couple different concepts, patterns that haven't been the bread and butter for the Rams over the last couple of years. At the end of the day, it's just going to make the Rams more explosive. So whether it's not like a pure development for a guy that they might potentially bring in, I think it's more just for overall offense. And then, Sean and Cliff having a good relationship and being like, hey, let's go ahead and brain trust this thing. Someone I can bounce ideas off of. He can, bounce ideas off me. We're all good enough friends not to have our feelings hurt. And then let's just do what's best for the Rams. And honestly, that was the move I was most excited for, because I saw that and I was like, oh man, if the Rams start throwing a little bit of, I don't want to say trickery, but a little bit of
oh my gosh,
pizzazz, maybe a good word.
That's a good word. I like that word.
I think it's just going to make the offense that much more explosive. If really you don't know what's coming, and then you got the horses behind it to go ahead and get it done. I think it's going to be a very exciting thing.
Do you hear that, Rams fans? He said the word explosive, pizzazz, some trickery. I mean, I'm really trying to dial it down and not go too crazy. I am so interested. This is why I love the off season and this time of year, because the architecture of getting guys in, and the Rams guy, they do it the best. They're a class act. They're so smart. They're so professional, and they're ahead of the curve in so many ways. So when that Cliff move happened, I remember it was right around the extension signed with Les and Sean, right around Super Bowl week. I'm like, ooh, this is dynamic. This is very interesting. Okay, I know we're short on time. I want to get in a couple more questions. Rams need to eventually look at quarterback.
Yep.
It has to be a conversation that just ends up being matter of fact about Matthew Stafford, which is crazy because he's 38 and the man is elite. I mean, still, it's insane. So MVP. I mean, unbelievable, especially when you know what you guys went through in training camp and he wasn't available. I mean, it's just he came back and he was dynamic and just he's just incredible. You have to look for his replacement eventually. So how do you see that? How do you handle that? And is there a guy in the draft that, sort of could be able to take over eventually whenever that happens?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because I'm sure there's been private conversations of, hey, do you want to play 1 more year, 2 more years, 3 more years? And I feel like as a player, as you kind of get a little older, it's like, man, I'm going to take it, day by day, let alone year by year. I'm taking hour by hour depending on how I'm feeling that day. So kind of the same thing as Devontae, he's kind of earned the right to end it on his own terms. But that being said, that's a little bit of uncertainty. So if there is a guy that they really love in the draft, everything I've been reading, I said they really like the Alabama quarterback. So if he's available and it's a move that I could 100% see, especially kind of the same thing I was talking about, bringing a young wide receiver in with a Devontae Adams. If you bring a young quarterback, whether it's in the second move back, I'm not sure if he's going to still be there in the third, but if there's an opportunity to either come up from another pick and take him, or in the second to go ahead and take a guy to have him sit under Matthew, learn for a year, because there's no better teachers than the guys who have done it at that level, like a Devontae, like a Matthew. So it's a move I wouldn't be surprised about. That being said, say this is Matthew's last year, he decides to hang up the cleats, and it's, we're kind of stuck with our butt in the wind a little bit, where it's, there's definitely quarterbacks that are always kind of floating around in free agency that can get you through a year. Maybe they're not the long-term staple, but it could be something like that, where then you almost have to go draft somebody young to go ahead and develop to be your future. But I could definitely see the Rams selecting a quarterback if there's one guy that they particularly like, and he's floating around there just for the security of the team moving forward.
And you have to. I mean, think about it. You're right. If Matthew leaves, somebody needs to learn, as obviously we did with an Aaron Rodgers, from a Brett Favre. You have these like unbelievable geniuses in the football world teaching you. So I thought somebody should have come in. I thought personally someone last year made sense. Just bring someone in draft, but obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about. I am not a Sean McVay. But it feels like this year. So that's interesting to hear you say you like Ty Simpson. People are also saying Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. Yep. So, again, we will find out in a couple of days who the Rams, if they decide that's a position of need this season. And I'm always, we were talking off camera about just the architecture, the understanding how teams gel and their cohesiveness. I think, figuring out the personalities that work and that mesh, that I find to be the most interesting, because obviously I didn't play football. Okay, real quick, I know I'm running out of time. I have to get in like this one more question. Rob Havenstein, offensive line. When you look at the offensive line, that's another conversation that people keep talking about. They're either the Rams are going to they're going offense somewhere at number 13 if they end up staying at 13. But a lot of people are wanting somebody really dynamic and great on the offensive line. Have you seen the tape of any guys? And if they do end up going O-line, is there a guy in this draft that you think has the stuff to be thrown in on a Sean McVay offensive line?
Yeah, there's a couple guys. I think the offensive tackle class this year is really deep. Obviously, you have contracts coming up next year for guards, and shoot most of them actually. Coleman, K-Dot, and Steve. Not talk money, but that's just the reality of it. But I feel like in the needs of either having depth or a starter right away, the only real reason I could see that would be if somebody falls for some specific reason, or just it just happens to shake out that way, where maybe there's just a run on wide receivers and offensive tackle or edge rushers. They're big in this draft too. If somebody falls, me personally, I really like the kid from Miami, Francis. I'm gonna butcher his last name. You know how to pronounce it?
Oh my God, yes. There's a couple that the names are.
Oh yeah,
a bit of a
mouthful. For the big right tackle for him, I love the way he plays. I love his balance. I love he's just a massive human being. I feel like anytime you have a massive tackle coming out of college, I was the same way. Everyone gets on. It's like, is he going to play guard? And I was like, no, he's going to play tackle. He's proven himself that he can play tackle. But there's other guys that come up. If somebody drops that should have been maybe in the top 10, I could see them just, hey, like I said, going best available. Hey, let's scoop this guy up. Maybe we can come back up for a receiver. But in terms of draft, man, I'm going to butcher this one, so I wrote it down. There's a kid who I think is going to be in the kind of the later round.
From Penn State?
No, he's interior. I think they're going to focus more on tackle, but
Oh.
there's a kid, Falali Ba'amui, right
Oh,
tackle,
okay.
right
Okay.
tackle, Wake Forest.
Ooh,
Just kind of watching some of his tape and kind of just the way he moves, some of the understanding of his hands and everything. And it wasn't a huge breakdown of it, but I like him for a late round. He seems like he's got some of the physical nature to it, and as long as people are efficient movers, I think that's the first thing that pops out on tape, and then you can teach them the rest. Luckily, if it is a late round developmental guy, you bring him in, you teach him, he learns. But as long as the actual like offensive tackle kind of mold is there, then you can go ahead and sculpt him into whatever you want.
we're going to talk to Rob and we're going to get like the whole lowdown on the offensive line. We don't have time because obviously it's draft week. But I can't wait to pick your brain because to me, that's the joy that the fans get. We're really getting to learn from you, a guy that's played in the NFL for 11 years, and at the offense and John just so well. You were just reliable for so many years. You have a couple of questions that Instagram wanted to ask you,
Sure.
and
I'm
I
excited
feel
for
like
this.
I can't not ask you these two very important questions. So
Uh-huh.
one was, who was your favorite player under 6'2"?
I have an idea of who that came from. So my favorite teammate I've ever had under 6'2" would definitely be Coleman Shelton. That's not who asked the question, but
It
Coleman's going
was
to be mad
not.
at that, and whoever asked the question is going to be mad at that too. So,
That's
no, I'm kidding.
amazing.
I want to say Coleman's over 6'2". He's like 6'2" and 1/16 or something like that. So I think he's out of the question, but definitely number 55 in our hearts and minds of Brian Allen. Just the guy is Chicago, and you get on his good side, he's going to be loyal forever. I love him forever. Just went out and celebrated him getting married. So
Mm,
I'm pretty sure that's where that came from. And so
it
Brian, we
might have.
love you. Yeah, he
It
might have.
might have.
So Brian, we
But
love
you
you.
know,
You're definitely my favorite teammate under
that's
6'2".
that that's amazing. That's amazing. It does feel like you guys have such a great relationship. Your camaraderie that you probably can't find anywhere else other than an NFL locker room in that
Mm-hmm.
way.
It's
So
hard to take.
it was sweet, the support. I mean, it seems like these guys really really loved you and probably will miss seeing you every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Brian Allen. He did in fact ask that question, and that's nice to know that he's your favorite player under 6'2".
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last but not least, what was it like playing in the Edward Jones Dome, aka the Dungeon?
There was a dungeon. There was a lot of fluorescent lighting. It was it was interesting to say the least. That was my first NFL experience, so I knew nothing, and so that to me was just kind of pro football, and obviously you got to see a couple different stadiums. Your first year, and but man, there's so many stories about that thing. I mean, they lit the turf on fire one time pre-game before the Steelers, and then once they got the turf patched up, the smoke didn't ventilate too well because it was too old, and so we had to have like an hour, 2 hour delay after we are just to start the game. Um, but for the time we were there, St. Louis was great to us, and I was only there a little bit. But it was definitely an older stadium. Turf kind of wasn't my favorite. I don't like any turf. Let's be real. And the lighting was a little jarring to say
Mm.
to say the least. It was a little fluorescent, kind of had that yellow hue going on, and then when you walked outside, you were like, "Oh, that's sunlight." Okay, gotcha.
Wow. Oh my
Yep,
God. That's amazing. So the floor, like the lighting was a tad off. You're saying SoFi, you enjoyed
yep,
playing at SoFi just a smidge more. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. You
Good
get
to
to
know.
see some sun, so
Yeah.
that's nice.
That's amazing. Rob, I went well over our time, but we wanted to get in some of our questions, especially leading up to the draft, since your finger is on the pulse and you're so closely tied into the team. And I really appreciate it. Maybe we can get your insight if you're free. I know you're doing a lot of things these days, but maybe around draft, if you're
Absolutely,
open to jumping on and just kind of giving your thoughts on who they end up picking. So
that'd
draft
be
day
great.
in a couple of days. Rob Havenstein, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, Erin.